This is the one you've known as Jesus the Christ. Everyone knows what home feels like. You know it from your simple everyday experience of arriving home after you've been away. And you also know it from the deeper spiritual experience of being home, or aligned with your divine nature. People love to be home because home feels a certain way. Whether you're arriving at your physical home or presence, home feels good. How would you describe the feeling of home? It's a feeling of relaxation, isn't it? A sense of, where you can finally relax and be as you are. When you arrive at your home, you can drop the persona, the public face, and the roles you play with others and just be, without all of that. And when you do that, you come home to your spiritual self. What's left when you drop your persona and roles is nobody, an experience of pure being. When you're nobody, you're home, spiritually speaking, and then you can feel at home even in the world. When you're nobody, you become your best self. Isn't it when you're the least focused on yourself that you are most happy and feel most at ease with yourself and others? That's one of the paradoxes of life. When you lose yourself, you gain everything you've ever wanted. The happiness you long for and the ease of being that allows for a loving and generous heart. When you lose yourself, you feel good and you make others feel good. When you become nobody, what you lose is self-consciousness, self-centeredness, and selfishness. These words, with their emphasis on self, belie the truth. The self is what interferes with being at home in the world. When you're at home, in both respects of the word, you are not self-conscious, self-centered, or selfish. You just are. Not everyone is able to just be who they are, even when they're at home alone. They haven't learned to be nobody. Even at home, they still wear their identities and roles. This is because their own mind maintains their identities and roles, even when those identities and roles are no longer needed. They think the self into existence again and again in each new moment with thoughts about I. When you're home, spiritually speaking, this is what you stop doing, which allows you to be at home with yourself, at home within yourself. When you're home with a capital H, you aren't thinking about yourself, although you might be thinking about something you enjoy that doesn't involve the reimagining of the self, its reconstitution. It's really only the thoughts about I that create the false self. Other thoughts are not a problem. They don't necessarily take you away from your true nature. You can write or read or create, for instance, without a single thought about yourself interfering with that experience. When that's the case, you're deeply enjoying yourself precisely because the self isn't there. It's the I that keeps people from being at home with themselves and others. That's interesting, isn't it? Most people are in love with their thoughts about I and heap an enormous amount of attention on them. They're fascinated by them. I is their favorite subject, when they're alone or with others. And now I'm suggesting that these most beloved of all thoughts actually keep you from what you desire most. And that's the truth. It's important to see the truth. If you don't, you won't be motivated to experience life as nobody, and that would be a shame. Loving your thoughts about yourself keeps you from everything you truly want. The fact that you love your thoughts about yourself is part of the programming that keeps the ego in place. If you weren't programmed to love your thoughts about yourself, they wouldn't be nearly as compelling. The egocentricity of the ego keeps the ego in place. The ego is a self-sustaining system in so many ways, and literally self-sustaining. Who are you if you're not this I? What does it mean to be nobody? What's it like? Everyone knows what being nobody is like because everyone spends some time every day being nobody. For instance, just before you drop off to sleep and just after you wake up, before ideas about you and your life kick in, and many other fleeting moments during your day. Being nobody might not sound appealing, but being nobody feels good, like being home, like the best possible experience of home. Being nobody is a worthy goal. It's actually the goal of the spiritual path, although people don't generally see it that way. Many spiritual people are still trying to be somebody spiritual, somebody who is awake or enlightened. But that is the catch. You can't be somebody and be your best self, your divine self. You can't be somebody and be awakened or enlightened. You have to lose yourself first by surrendering your thoughts about yourself and your life. That's all, really. You're naturally good, naturally divine, but your thoughts about yourself interfere with knowing that and living as that. On the spiritual path, there's a sacrifice to be made. What must be sacrificed is your personhood, the false self. You don't get to be somebody and be awake in the moment, be in presence. These are mutually exclusive states of consciousness. The price you must pay for being awake in any moment is the self that you've loved and hated and obsessed over. You don't get to bring that self home with you. You have to leave it at the doorstep. All of your thoughts about me and my life must go or be seen for what they are, as belonging to the illusory world of the false self, as not real, not who you are. You can still enjoy being the character you're playing, while knowing yourself as that which is beyond all personhood, all identities, and all roles. Then you can wear your roles and identities much more lightly, like costumes you put on briefly when you need to while in the world. But there is no need to wear them at home. In fact, to be home in the spiritual sense of the word, you cannot wear them. When you slip your costume off, you know yourself as the spacious emptiness that created and expresses through everything. However, to be clear, you are not an individual expression of that spaciousness. Rather, you experience no individuality, no sense of existing as a self at all. You are nowhere to be found. This spaciousness is not contained in anything, not in you or even in an enlightened person, but pervades everything. It is without boundaries. When you lose your I-ness, you don't exist as a different, improved I somewhere. You don't exist at all. To say, I'm spacious, or I'm nobody, is inaccurate, although we have no other way of speaking about these things except to use such dualistic language. There is no I. No individual self exists anywhere. All individual selves are a mirage. They are thought into an imaginary existence. You are here, you are alive, but there is no you, only consciousness animating a body and everything else. One thing, only one thing, doing all of it. When you lose your thoughts about I, you gain everything. You not only gain peace and happiness, but you experience yourself, excuse the language, as everywhere and in everything, so you literally gain everything. Your sense of self extends into all that you see and experience. The trees and flowers and ground and sky are all happening within you. You are not separate from any of it. It's all happening inside of you. That's what happens when you become nobody. You also become everything. Is this enjoyable? Absolutely. It's the experience that you as a soul have longed for throughout time, to return home to your true nature. I've talked about love as a homing device before, but this very important teaching deserves repeating. How you return home is through love. Whenever you choose love over your I thoughts, you're rewarded with more of the same, love. When you give love, the good feeling you have inside tells you that you're going in the right direction, and that good feeling encourages you to continue in that direction. That feeling of love tells you when you're home or on the road to home, and shows you how to get there. And that feeling of love shores you up on your journey. Home is the experience of love, and that's what every human being really wants. You have lots of programming that leads you astray, but love is also part of that programming. You are built to go toward love, and love does eventually win out over the ego. The egoic programming is not more powerful than love. You're only under the ego's spell until you've completed the lessons that the egoic programming was designed to create. The ego has been your teacher. Suffering has been your teacher. But once you're ready to be love, then home is in sight and suffering can end. Love will keep pulling you home until you arrive, and that will be sweet indeed. Thank you for being here. Thank you for opening to love. I am with you always.